So we're about to start this week's session. Welcome to our live stream. We've got a crew just waiting for us to begin. And here they come now. Come on over, guys. So the way these sessions start is we have a little ritual to enter the temple. That way, each of us as we go in are like making a time for ourselves to make it special. So if you're on the live stream, I just invite you to just take a moment to think, to take this time to appreciate or connect with that which is really important to you. So we're going to bow as we enter the temple, bow to the enlightened being within yourself, and then grab a seat. So let's go. So let's just start with setting our intention for this session. So my intention for myself is to be inspired and uplifted, and for the best part of me to shine today, but also to keep that with me all day, every day. And I hope you take a moment to just set that intention for yourself. My intention is more than that, not for each of us to be inspired, but also for our community to be vibrant and more happy. This community and all the communities that you're in. And ultimately, I'd like every one of us to have our sights set upon a world where everyone is enlightened. A world where our culture and our mindsets are happy and wise and strong. Not only can everyone handle and deal with anything and everything, but people are kinder, and we actually just make a world that is just so much better for all of us. So let's just take a moment to imagine that, to set our intention that as you grow and transform, we help everybody to do that. We'll set the intention that we will help everyone to do that. We're all in this together. Team humanity, creating the world to be more wonderful. Okay, so we can grab a seat now. Excellent. Welcome to all our regulars, and welcome back to our regulars we haven't seen for a while. For those of you who just arrived, we're actually live streaming this session, so I hope that's okay for everybody. And if you're there on the live stream, please feel free to write any questions or comments. I'll try and check that every now and then and have you part of the session. Excellent. So, my plan for today is to share the visions that transformed my whole mindset. And not just to share them, but I'd like to guide them as a meditation for you to also have those experiences. And I hope they're enlightening. I hope they're perspective transforming and they're inspiring. So I think I'll tell a little bit of a backstory, and then I want us just to dive straight into the meditation. I didn't have it in a meditation. This vision's just hit me, but I want to guide it as a meditation for you to also be able to experience it powerfully and epically. Just give me a moment. I'm going to grab a seat. A real world seat. Here we go. Wonderful. So, before I discovered about transforming our minds and choosing positivity and practicing who we wanted to be, I, like any person, had some strengths and some weaknesses, some things that made me happy, some things that made me sad. And there was one chapter of my life where the self-criticism or the unhappiness had dominated more in my life. So I was feeling pretty down. But I wasn't mindful at all. I didn't realize that I was doing that to myself. I just assumed that's how I felt, and that's what life was. And my cousin, who was my hero, he was super talented, really great at all kinds of things. Hadn't seen him for a while. And we found out that he had committed suicide. And we weren't very great at talking about emotions and supporting one another as a family. So when I got the news, I just went off to be by myself. And my first reaction was just to feel really down and question what's the point of anything. But then it hit me that negative feelings, negative thoughts, negative focuses was what had caused this to happen. And I kind of realized that I was also doing that. And I was like, well, this sucks. I don't want to do this at all. I want to do something else. And then it kind of hit me how on earth had I gotten myself into feeling like that? I was safe. I had a family that looked after me. I was in a country where there wasn't any war. How on earth had I taken my mind into such an unhappy place? How had my cousin gone so much deeper into that negative place? And then my mind expanded out and looked across the whole town. We lived on the edge of town, and I was kind of looking across the whole city, 1 million people in my imagination. And I was just thinking of all the sad people, all the angry people, all the alone people, all the hatred, the people who are fighting. And I don't want to say that it's just a dark picture. I'm sure across the city there was also lots of happiness and joy and fun. But I was just looking at all the darkness and thought, how on earth does our society have so much of that? And something just, I don't know if this is true or not, but my mind just said to itself hey, we're missing the point. There's something about our approach to life, something about how we approach our mind and living that's just not right. How could we be doing this to ourselves? And I made this request to my subconscious. hey, subconscious, if you can show me how I'm meant to be, I'm going to do it. So in that moment, there was this shift of perception, but I had no idea how to actually do it. And then I kind of was struck by a deeper thing after making that dedication. That not just me, but if I could see a way for the whole world to be, if we could make communities happier and help one another, I've dedicated myself to bring that to the world. Anyway, nothing much happened. I just had this sort of moment of awe, and then it faded. And then I don't remember if it was days or a week or two afterwards, but I was just sitting in my room, and then suddenly I was struck by a vision. I'd never had a vision. I'd daydreamed sometimes, but suddenly this just epic daydream took over. I was in this dream that was so powerful, and I'd like to share this vision with all of you. And so I was just instantly teleported to this vision. And so to recreate that, I'm going to take us into a meditation to fire up our visual imagination and emotions so that you can experience some of what I got to see. So for everybody here in the temple, I invite you to get comfortable and ready to go on what I think is a really beautiful journey. And people on the live stream, please get yourself comfortable, sitting or lying down. I'm going to do a couple of little exercises to get us into meditation, and I'll tell you when the vision started as it was. So let's all close our eyes and take a few slow, deep breaths. So often in meditation, we let the world around us disappear and we come into our consciousness. So you could imagine if your attention was inward, like you were fully in a daydream or fully in meditation in your breath. Everything else had just disappeared. Maybe you could imagine the sounds around you, the volume of them just turning down and down. And however you're feeling and whatever state of mind you're in, with each breath you take, just let that become peace, become calm. Notice what your mind is like right now. Is your verbal mind active? How you feel? Where's your attention? How quickly is your attention moving? What's your visual mind like right now? Are you imagining or seeing anything? And I invite you to go deeper into meditation. Just by envisaging it, your mind will go there. A greater sense of peace and stillness, and where your visual mind is more vibrant. Each thing I describe, you'll experience it more vividly, brighter, more wonderfully. As we now begin the vision that struck me, I found myself in a vast, empty void, like floating in outer space. In every direction, it's just massive. Imagine yourself floating in this vast emptiness. It was almost blackness in every direction, but this space was so powerful, so wonderful. It's like I could feel the fabric of space-time buzzing. It's like this golden shimmering just in space-time around me. And then I noticed right in front of me, I could see a mind. Inside of it, happiness, joy, love, sadness, anger. The part that plays tennis, the part that ties a shoelace. And as I looked at this mind and saw all the different parts of this mind, the mind was represented as billions of little bubbles. There was a happy bubble. It's just a smiley face, bouncing around, flowing through the mind, and everything it bounced into. It's just a little happier, a little more smiley. There was a confidence bubble, and as it went around, it would make the things it interacted with feel more confident and powerful. And these happy, positive, uplifting bubbles, they were bright and energetic. And when I looked into the bubble, I could see or feel or understand what was in it. There was a field hockey bubble. When I looked inside, I could see someone running with a stick hitting the ball. And then nearby I saw someone missing a ball in another bubble. And another one of confidence, another one of how they tackled, another one of how they shot on goal. Different bubbles for every aspect. I saw the same set of bubbles around communication, patience, kindness, anger, upset, loneliness, shyness, excitement, care, understanding. So let yourself look at all of these bubbles in a mind in front of you, seeing all the aspects of human existence. And the brighter, more positive bubbles are bouncing around and impacting others. And just by putting your attention on them, they're faster and brighter. There's more happiness and positivity. And at that time in my life, there was also a lot of dark, slow bubbles. Sad bubbles, shy bubbles, angry bubbles. And when they interacted with other bubbles, they'd make them darker and slower. Sometimes it'd even be a whirlpool of the slow, darker bubbles just holding each other. So you can now see in this mind in front of you, there's some bright, happy, vibrant, uplifting, helpful bubbles. There's many bubbles that are just so-so. How you are here. How you chop your toast in the morning. How you open the door. There's this whole spectrum of bubbles. Bright energy, energetic, uplifting bubbles, neutral bubbles, darker bubbles. You can watch them swirling and rolling. You can imagine what happens when a bright bubble and a dark bubble interact. Sometimes they come out brighter, sometimes they come out darker. So as I watched this web of bubbles interacting and just felt a more and more deep understanding of who I am, or who we all are, all of these different aspects of ourselves just evolving over time. My perception shifted, and suddenly, rather than looking at each bubble as one aspect of an individual, I felt as if I was seeing the whole world. Billions of individuals, each one interacting with others, some spreading a love of fruit, some spreading happiness and kindness, some spreading loneliness, some spreading science, some spreading art, some spreading anything and everything that's in human culture. All of us just sharing what our focus is in that moment, influencing everyone we interact with. So imagine watching that world and all those bubbles over thousands of years, and just seeing the cultures shift and change and evolve. And I hope as you see that, you also get a feel of when we transform ourselves or intentionally focus on something else, not only does it shift how you are and impact those around you, but over time that impacts more and more and more. Getting a feel of interconnectedness and shifting directions of some things over time can really shift the direction of everything. So anyway, my perception shifted back to just seeing within an individual. You could say within yourself, the mind of yourself, seeing all the parts of it. And something I noticed is that you can probably feel it in the dynamics of how the bubbles worked. Positive bubbles would often move in a stream of positivity together. They would lift up each other, inspire each other, and they would flow more and more. And it's like these streams of positivity. And then there was also these like dark whirlpools of slowness, frustration, lack of energy or enthusiasm. And as you look at this mind, you could imagine what it would be like to look in a mind, a bubble mind of someone who's having a pretty good life, or someone who's struggling at the moment. Or someone who's really struggling. or someone who's practicing enlightenment and practicing transforming things and making things better. Or you could imagine looking in the mind of a fully enlightened being. And so what happened next is where all the magic begins. I was there looking at this mind interacting and evolving over time. Each bubble, just really noticing the energy of the bubbles. And then suddenly, I felt behind me one of the most epic sensations of my whole life. At the time, it was the most epic feeling I had ever had. And I looked around, and there was this big super bubble. I looked into it, and like in these other bubbles, I could see kindness or happiness or frustration. In looking into this bubble was just pure awesomeness. It was so bright. It's like the brightest thing I'd ever seen. And it was so fast. But because it was epic, time slowed down like watching slow motion in a movie. So as you imagine this bubble of pure enlightenment, pure awesomeness, as you look into it, you'll see it getting brighter and brighter, and you'll feel the enlightenment and the wisdom more and more. As I watch this bubble heading towards the mind of all the bubbles. And as it got closer, I just felt more and more epicness about to happen. I didn't know what, but looking into that bubble felt like the answer to that question I'd had of how are we supposed to be? How's the world supposed to be? Just looking into this epic bubble as it crashed into the mind. And you can imagine just like waves of happiness and positivity just splashing all everywhere that bubble went. And this bubble burst into 3 awesomeness bubbles. And they started flowing through the mind with infinite energy and potential. So each bubble they hit just bounced off, transformed and awesome. So as it hit the field hockey bubbles, all of them became so skillful and confident, trick shots, feeling confidence within themselves, being dedicated to being healthy. As the bubbles moved through relationships, it saw angry bubbles turning into hugs, arguments turning into listening. As one of these super bubbles approached one of those pits of despair and darkness where it was all stuck and slow, as the bubble went through that pit, just instantly transformed it. All of those aspects just becoming free and energized and happy. And so I was watching these super bubbles touching every aspect of the mind. It was beautiful, uplifting. Not every aspect of the mind, but every aspect of life, every aspect of yourself. And then 2 of those super bubbles bumped into one another. And boom, exploded out as 5 super bubbles. And they were zipping around making things even better. Bringing wisdom to the mind, mindfulness and awareness. Bringing a love for learning. Bringing a love for community and patience and understanding. Bringing extra skillfulness to everything I did or everything that each person would do. And now there were more of these super bubbles. 2 of them bumped into each other, exploded out as 5 of these super bubbles. So there's even more of this goodness buzzing around. And the rest of the mind's already more buzzing with positivity. There's billions of these bubbles. So a lot of it's great, but still the bubbles are flowing through and transforming. And then 2 of the super bubbles hit each other and exploded out as 5 more. And if you've ever seen a visualization of a fission reaction, like a chain reaction that turns into explosion. It was like that. Just more and more of this positivity, making more and more positivity, and more super bubbles, exploding into more super bubbles. Imagining yourself just full of more and more of these sparks of enlightenment. And the more of these sparks, the more sparks they would generate. And it got to this critical mass where the sparks just began to just take over, and until the entire mind was just brimming solid with super bubbles. It was like this emanating cloud of light filling the whole mind, and it was just full, brimming and brimming and brimming, and then the entire infinite void just filled with this light. And I found myself just lying on the floor in my room, just buzzing with energy. And I sat up. I remember my first thought is, I have to find out what that bubble was. And from that moment on, I was completely transformed. No, I didn't have enlightenment. I didn't have happiness. I didn't have any of the things that I'd seen in the vision. I just had this hope that somehow there was a way to wildly do that. So, I wasn't a spiritual person, and so having visions sounds pretty out there to me, not in the realm of normalness. So I could explain it that I gave this epic instruction to my subconscious, and my subconscious then put something together. I'm sure spiritual people out there would say it was a prayer answered, or it was a devotion that was rewarded. But anyway, it was the most epic experience I'd ever had. But I was left, what is this bubble? What was this awesomeness? And then a few days later, I went into a large room full of books. And far across the room, there was a little paperback, but I could read what was down the spine. And it looked very big, like my perception had warped, like this thing just stood out. It was like 1 centimeter thick spine of the book, but it looked 3 or 4 centimeters big. It just caught my attention epically. And like I said, I was not a spiritual person. This was the second weird experience of my life. Wow, something big must be going on. And I could read the spine. It said, this is the official guide to success. I know that might sound funny, but in the state of mind I was in, that sounded awesome for what I wanted. I ran over and I grabbed the book. And the back page of the book said, this book is going to show you how to flip your switch from lose to win. And I was suddenly so excited that maybe this is going to line up with the vision I just had. And I opened to the first page. There was hundreds of chapters in this little book. Each chapter was just half a page or a page or two, covering some aspect of life. And this first chapter basically said, everything in your life, everything about you comes from instinct, your upbringing, or everything you've kept telling yourself since you were old enough to talk to yourself. And I was just in awe. This is the vision that I had. We are just made of all these parts that just keep reinforcing and transforming. And I was so excited. How did this book jump out at me after having this vision? And the book then went on to say, so this is wonderful. If we know this is how it works, we can then take control of it. Instead of just randomly reinforcing, I'm like this, I feel like that, I'm good at that, I'm no good at that, like so many of us do, just reinforcing, restating those self-instructions. Instead of that, we can choose what to focus on, what to visualize, what to tell ourselves. And basically for the rest of the book, he just kept reinforcing that over and over, just reminding you every couple of pages to powerfully, visually imagine who you want to be, to feel it, to speak like that, to have the attitudes like that, continually reinforcing awesomeness. And throughout the whole book, there was a chapter on relationships and on work and on fitness and on health. And each one of those things he'd reinforce, just practice being awesome. Here's some suggestions how you could be awesome, but come up with your own and just bring awesomeness into every part of your life. So that was pretty wild for me to have had this vision and then find a tool of how to visualize or use the vision. Now, I imagine a lot of people read this book and they're like, okay, cool, I'll be happier, I'll be kinder, I'll be more successful. But I read the book with the idea of this epic super bubble and enlightenment for all beings. So I was visualizing like being wildly, wonderfully happy and enlightened and love for everybody. I guess I should also say there were a couple of other awesome books that came to me at the time. One given by a teacher that I knew and another from a friend. And so the book from the teacher was about mindfulness, learning to watch your mind and notice what you're thinking and focusing on. So being able to see what you're telling yourself is awesome. If you can just tell yourself, oh yeah, I'm happy, I'm great, but then you're also telling yourself, oh, I'm sad, I'm not great, without really paying attention to it. The fact that you're doing both, you're going to get not so great results. But if you're actually watching your mind carefully and you see that part of you that's going bleh, and you make that part also do the positivity, and you get your entire self, you get all the bubbles focused on in awesomeness, the transformation is just epically more wonderful. So I'm practicing positive thinking every day and mindfulness every day. The mindfulness book also had a meditation on inner peace and on confidence and on love and kindness. And the idea of a world where everyone's kind to each other and cares for one another just seemed so much better where I was feeling lonely and angry. So I dedicated myself to being loving for all beings and trying to spread that every one of us cultivates that and wants that for all of us. So there was the meditation book, the self-transformation book, and a friend also showed me a mnemonics program. So for those of you who've been here for a while and we did the visualization exercises, like seeing lines or seeing shapes and practicing being able to visualize, this book trained me how to visualize really vividly and actively program my brain with it. So being able to learn things ultra vividly. Say, for example, if someone's name was Creek, if I imagine them playing in a creek, I'm much more likely next time I see them to remember a creek than if I just say the word. So this whole course was like what I just said, but layers upon layers of brain programming or memory programming. They actually, for anyone who's a programmer, they created data structures, like an array of 100 different memory points that you could connect memories to. And they gave you systems for how to visualize abstract ideas. So it was this training on brain control for memory. So here I am every day training my brain to be super vivid, realizing that, hey, if I just shift how I try to remember things, instead of remembering 7 things, I can remember 1,000 things, like learning them on the spot. It was like epically inspiring that our brain can do things so wildly differently with just a different approach. So yeah, training myself that my mind is vibrant and awesome, that I'm mindful, that I'm loving, and getting myself to feel good about work, feel good about studies, feel loving and kind to everyone in the community. Suddenly I was just getting much better at all the sports I played. I cared about my fitness and health. I started to love healthy food. When I say suddenly, I mean each one of those things, I would be visualizing them each day and practicing them and feeling them. And just for a few minutes, pretending I was perfect at that part of me. And then I got to practice being awesome at that. And so yeah, over a month or two, each one of those things I said was, hey, now I'm now this awesome version of myself. So I like to take the attitude of like, hey, it's sudden, instant transformation, just so it's exciting. And in the big picture of things, it was pretty much instant. Like I kind of remember this, boom, it's just transformed. If I look closely, yes, it was like weeks of training. But yeah, it's exciting to think that you can just transform your mind. And when you think of yourself, I'd like you to envisage just what would it be like if you could just instantly shift, flick this switch, flick that switch. It's more uplifting and it lets you dream bigger. So yeah, that was basically my first vision, followed with the books that helped me then live it and the exercises that helped me practice it. So I said to you that tonight was going to cover the 2 visions that changed my life. So I want you to imagine if you were living as a brain ninja, every day, mindfulness meditation, positivity, physical exercise, compassion meditation, and not just doing those exercises, but having your intention set on enlightenment, the whole world being blissfully more wonderful. So each time you do it, you're creating more bliss and more wonder. So yeah, a month or 2 in, I was happy, like really happy, unshakably happy. And I was confident and I was just getting better at everything. And so I had some months of that. And then it was Christmas Day and my whole extended family had come over. And yes, we had lost my cousin some months earlier. We didn't really talk about that much, or at all. But yeah, so we're all there, and I was excited to show them the transformations that I'd had and what I'd learned. So I gave a demonstration. I got everyone to just think of 5 random things. So I memorized 65 things they gave me super quickly and could just throw them back. And I thought that was really amazing. And I told them how I'd trained myself to be much happier and more positive. And I was like, it's quite actually simple practices. You just can do them. I'd love to teach you all. And there was 0 enthusiasm, a couple of jokes, and a few people were like, nah, I'm not interested. And I still don't understand why. But I remember walking to my room feeling down, dashed. And as I said, I'd been practicing mindfulness. So very quickly I was like, whoa, hang on, I'm feeling down. I haven't felt this for months. Whoa, what's going on here? I inspected my mind. Why am I feeling like this? And then I saw it was the expectation that I'd had that this was going to go a certain way with my family. And then holding to that expectation, then there was this pain of it not matching what was there. And so then I let go of that. And then the second vision hit me. If you remember in the first vision, part of the bubbles, one of the ways of seeing it was everything within yourself, making yourself better and more awesome. But another way of seeing it was to look at the world and all the individuals impacting one another. And so I saw my attachments and expectations to the people around me had caused me to feel a certain way. And then I imagined a community where everyone was mindfully helping each other to be enlightened, actively loving and supporting one another, and not just love and support, but practicing being awesome and helping one another to practice being awesome. And so just like the super bubble transforming within a person, I imagined a community where it was positivity just bouncing back and forward, getting better and better and brighter. And This vision went on for hours. So I'm going to try and condense it into an experience for all of us. So imagine this community getting bright and awesome, and then creating live streams or creating video games where the characters get enlightened and awesome and you learn lots of things by playing, or making art or movies that impact and teach and transform people. So I imagine these communities that weren't just helping the people there, but that were creating stuff to transform the world. And then I imagine these communities popping up all over the world so that everyone had somewhere to go. Anyone who needed something, they knew that there was this place in their community they could go to where people would care, that people would support them, people would encourage them. And so I imagine this network of awesomeness across the whole planet. Then it went on to be a really functioning network. So let's just say someone comes up with an awesome brain program of, oh, I wake up and giggle. And people try it and they're like, wow, that's actually a really great brain program or habit or piece of culture. So the network would then say, hey, everybody, try out this awesome brain program. Or, hey, everyone, we just want to remind everyone that kindness for all beings is great. So everybody could share the best of what they had from all over the world. It doesn't even have to be new brain programs. Someone could say, hey, in our culture we have this song, and this song that we sing together makes us all feel united. So this network would be taking the best of all the cultures across the world and sharing it out with everybody. And everyone would be experimenting and exploring and trying and just sharing the best they had so that the world would just keep getting better and better. And then I saw intentional communities popping up so people could find those people who they had similar projects, similar ideas, similar values together, so they could live in bigger communities to share. So I was seeing places where like you had giant communal kitchens and huge meals together and shared sports facilities. And I was imagining these epically good teams that were making their lives great. An extended family to help look after kids together, and education where everyone got a chance to teach the kids their speciality, not just their work skills, but also the things that make them laugh the most, or the ways they're the most loving or wise, and every person being cherished for their wisdom and their goodness. And you could imagine hours of this, seeing world peace, seeing governments being transformed, seeing businesses and organizations learning how to work together better to bring about the best of all the ideas of what humanity has, seeing every school teaching people with mindfulness, training people in kindness and confidence. Think of all the kids who are at the moment who are like, oh, I'm no good at that. Oh, everybody hates me. Oh. Imagine if school just taught everybody to be happy and confident. Like how much that would change the world. And then the vision started to get pretty wild. Like the internet, I'd never had access to the internet. So as far as I was concerned, it didn't exist yet. So I was imagining the whole world being able to share super fast goodness everywhere. And then I started seeing virtual reality and all these new worlds appearing. And then I was seeing like quantum computers taking over the universe, just filling the universe with awesomeness. Like it was hours of epic thing, but the main part was what I just said. Well, the main part we can practice today was what I was saying: communities and envisaging that awesome world and living it. And once I saw that vision, that's all I ever wanted to do since then, was bring about these communities, help people to be amazing, establish these communities everywhere, have organizations sign on to the vision of, hey, working together for humanity, have people learn how to be amazing, bring that to their friends and family, and the world just collectively, we all just make it more and more beautiful. So, deep breath. that's the two visions that I had that transformed my life.
That was awesome, man. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I can't imagine having an experience like that.
Well, now that you've heard it, I hope every day you do imagine having an experience like that.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, please.
How similar would you describe either thing, but primarily the second thing? How similar to that is Buddhism, do you think? Like, do you think those are one-to-one? Or do you think that it's stuff that is implied through it, but not necessarily it? Or kind of separate?
Well, my first thought when I hear that is Buddhism isn't one unanimous thing. Every group has a different vision. So yeah, I can't say they're one-to-one. Every moment is different every moment. But yes, Buddhism sets up monasteries around the world, communities that support one another. Do they have brain programming for every aspect of your life to be awesome? In some branches of Buddhism, they mention it. I haven't ever found it with the focus and the enthusiasm in which I saw that. But yeah, it's there in Buddhism. And I went on a journey over the following decade to explore different cultures and religions from all over the world. And I found a lot of religions where they've got these buildings all over the world where people come together and support one another. And they've got structures where the different levels of organization. So someone is helping coordinate the local community, and someone else is helping coordinate the country, and then the countries are working together. And some of them have programs where throughout the year they learn what they think is their important stuff. Every year they do that. There are beautiful, awesome things in the organizations out there. And so within United Visions, we wanted to take those awesome bits from all of them and put the stamp of goodness on each one. So we're like, hey, we acknowledge all these things are kind of under the umbrella of Team Humanity. I also found in a lot of these groups a lack of rationality, believing in things just because someone said it, where if you're skeptical for just a minute, you can see where it was wrong. So in the vision I had, it was not only super inspiring and lovely, it was also analytical and brilliant and based on truth. The reason I didn't become a Buddhist monk was because I never found a Buddhist lineage that I could say I agreed fully with. They always taught something where I was like, well, that doesn't seem right. If you remember in the vision, every little aspect of an individual was its own bubble. And every single teaching within a movement is its own bubble. So I think rather than putting a box around things like this is Buddhism or this is Mormonism, it would be better if humans would just say, hey, there's this beautiful habit of compassion meditation. Oh, and Buddhists do it, and some of these New Age people do it. And there's structures of organization, and the Ananda Margas are really good at that, and the United Nations is good at that, and Mormons are really good at that. And, we put these boxes around things and we think, oh, that's Buddhism. But even when we put the boxes there, it's not true. Like, groups influence each other all the time. You look at one group and a generation or two later, they'll be teaching different things. Or if you go to the next city over, they'll be teaching different things. These boxes are leaking into each other all the time and evolving all the time. So I would rather just look at all of humanity and get our focus to be on all the best things. Take all the best things into those organizations and bring the best things out of all those organizations and spread them everywhere. I know that's not specifically what you asked, but that is what I feel is the answer to that question. And yeah, as I was searching across all these different movements and faiths, I found glimpses of so much of the vision. But often I found that the people there were more focused on, hey, we've been doing this ritual, or, oh, we believe in this supernatural thing, and that's what we want to focus on. So even though if in the teachings they had this awesome thing, maybe the person who started it or one of their great teachers had said it, it might not have had the same focus or emphasis that I was hoping. And I also want the same criticism for me. Like maybe there are some epically great things that I'm not paying enough attention to. So I hope that we can all help each other pay attention to the things that are most helpful and amazing. And yeah, sometimes I'd go to those groups and try to say, hey, look, this will be more uplifting and awesome. And I'd get responses that I'm sure I had some positive influence. But I'd like a community where people are excited to explore what's as helpful and awesome as possible, rather than being resistant to change. Like, this is the way we do it, and because this is the way we do it. Like, that's kind of the opposite of what this vision was. It was learning and growing as much as possible. So, Fence, I hope that was a okay answer to the question.
Yeah, of course. That was interesting.
Thanks. Anyone here or on the live stream have any other questions or comments? Yes, please, Creek.
I suppose this is like a kind of a question of a clarification, and or maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but maybe like a light critique as well, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, so in your vision with the, you said like the more skillful or helpful bubbles, as well as maybe the unhelpful bubbles or less skillful, and then the neutral ones, right? And then you had the great enlightened bubble, so to say, that would come in and change them to their most enlightened state. I think maybe the vision is the understanding that, and this kind of ties into maybe why your family or maybe other people in your life that you've spoken this to aren't as receptive to it. And I think it's the understanding that perspective, or your awareness, defines the truth in someone's life, whether it's for a moment or maybe a long narrative they're creating in their mind. But because they believe it to be true, maybe they retell it to themselves a lot. That's what defines their experience. And I would say the enlightened bubble is the understanding that your experience is defined by the truth you set it out to be, but it's so fluid and dynamic because you can inform that truth as well as so many other things inform it as well. So if there's an endless amount of perspectives to take, an enlightened bubble would be the most wise, possibly most skillful version or perspective to take and let that be truth. And the reason I'm saying this to clarify that is I would say the greatest wisdom is maybe not to define things as wholly and forever helpful or absolute truth. Maybe it's understanding the power of interpreted truth and narrative is endless, is so very free, and what is good for one person today could be even better for another tomorrow. This wisdom might not be so helpful anymore, but this one might be even more helpful today, because the whole world is this crazy kaleidoscope of change. And I think that the power and liberation of those enlightened bubbles is understanding that our truth is what defines our perspective and our life, but knowing that we can change that deeply and that it's so crazy fluid and dynamic is what liberates us to be enlightened. As opposed to just, like you said, maybe stamping like, oh, that one's good. It might be good for like 10,000 years, but not forever. It could be even greater tomorrow, or even better the next minute. I think everything is entirely fluid. That would be maybe my critique. And maybe as to why people are afraid to accept that is, I think what you're telling people when you show them this is, what you're saying is, hey, your perspective is true. Just know that you can change it, which I think it kind of flips a mirror on people where they have to deeply ask themselves, am I choosing the best experience for myself right now? And it's kind of scary, I think, for somebody on the onset to believe that maybe not. Because I think most people might tell themselves that yes, this is true, and because it's true it must be right, because I divined it, as opposed to allowing themselves the infinite exploration of change, the absolute liberation of power. There you go. Those are my thoughts.
Wonderful. So my first response is, you said maybe the enlightened bubbles were perspective. Perspective and the ability to shift perspective was certainly part of the bubbles, and the enlightenment impact on that would be creating better perspectives. But it wasn't all the bubbles. Say, for example, playing hockey. It's not really perspective as to hitting it every time okay, or training yourself to hit with precision and speed every time. You could think of a lot of skills where you can just be better at it. Not just physical skills, but also emotional skills. Just in general, having a deeper sense of peace or well-being. So, yeah, there was so much of just improving. Now, you mentioned that in regards to perspective, being able to shift how we see things, definitely that was part of it, being able to appreciate life. Or, in these classes here, I've talked about the ability of people that you can make it so that you can love foods that you didn't like, or you can enjoy people or groups that you used to have a certain reaction to. So shifting your perspective and experience of things is certainly part of it. Then you mentioned that wisdom, maybe life's like this wild kaleidoscope, so maybe some points of wisdom will be helpful sometimes and some others. Now, as I said, I went and explored all these different cultures, and I saw so many examples of what you just said. But often those things were, let's just say I have a parable, a story that some people find helpful and then other people might not find helpful. Ultimately, if we could look at it and be like, hey, this story, when you look at the story this way, can be helpful when you're in this situation. I think that's how we should approach that. I see a lot of self-help and coaching stuff where if you're suffering and confused, this is a story, they'll give you this story or perspective that's a little less suffering or a little less confused. But if you're liberated and choosing awesome, if you were to then focus on those stories, and believe those stories or believe those ideas about yourself, there'd be a giant step down. So I guess what I hope humanity does is find things that are actually true. The ability to watch our mind as opposed to not being aware and unconscious. I'm fairly confident that's always going to be a good thing. The ability to be understanding of others, thinking about their perspective, I'm going to say I'm fairly confident that that's almost always the right thing. Maybe I was going to say there could be scenarios where you need to react more quickly, but I'd hope we'd be trained to be considerate automatically, that we can respond as well as possible to every person. And then as for like different tidbits of culture that could be uplifting or helpful here, going through a lot of different spiritual groups, I saw a lot of things that were a mix of helpful and false. And people would see the helpful bit and then just be like, yeah, this thing's great. So I hope as humanity we're able to see, oh yeah, this part of it is helpful, and this part of it, there's not actually any evidence for that part. Or if I was to just believe that part without the helpful part, it would have no impact on me. Or maybe it's even just lead me to be confused and delusional. So the umbrella of goodness that I was looking for or describing was the parts that we can be sure of. Any organization that teaches kindness, we would say, yeah, we're both on the same page for teaching kindness. Or any organization that encourages people to try to be better, we're both on the same page for that. And yes, I'm totally open that in sometime in the future, or even from a vastly more enlightened perspective, a lot of what I say might be suboptimal, less enlightening than this other perspective. But the organization would be open to finding those. So as soon as humanity has something better, we make that the goal and the focus of humanity. So yeah, the thing you were saying, that was actually part of the vision. It was an ever-evolving, ever-improving organization. Yes, please?
Okay, so thank you for your response. And it might be also, I'm going to say something very meta, but it applies to me as I say it as well. So I hear you say, like, things that are better, and that you're definitely open to change as they change with I guess, as the world changes. But I guess what I'm saying is I think, and of course we agree, also I'll put that as well out there, we agree on the same, that I too also want nothing but the most enlightened and happy and prosperous experience for all sentient beings. I guess in total what I'm saying is that better is entirely defined by the one who's defining it. And I guess in a way what I'm saying is there is no one way, right? There's only your way. Now there are things that are genuinely helpful, which you could call true, but helpful is also a matter of perspective, right? When should I implement it? How should I implement it? I don't think that those are things that we could define. Maybe it's better to give people the power of liberation to see that they're able to make decisions. But again, so basically what I'm saying is my perspective is entirely informing what I'm saying. So because I can't have your literal experience and step into it, I think it's very tough for me to understand the language that you're using. I think that might be an issue. But in any case,
so
I
you
also
mentioned
agree with what you're saying.
You mentioned that different people will define what is good. And while there was a sense of goodness in this vision, there was nothing dogmatic saying this is what is true. It was just empowerment. It was just freedom for people to be as awesome as they wanted. And I mentioned that I saw intentional communities popping up. And part of what I saw was people coming together with where they had a lot of alignment of what they thought was good. So then they had a culture where this certain kind of thing was really good and important, and so they would then, their culture would evolve more in that direction. I'll give a gross example. There might be a culture who really cares about not using profanity, and so they all speak very well, and the kinds of vocabulary they'll develop would go a certain way. And there might be another group who loves to swear and be very emotive in their swearing. So their vocabulary and then their culture and their jokes will evolve in a different direction. And I think we should create communities where people can really explore all the different ways to be. And I would hope that we get good as humanity of saying, hey, look at this group. When they act this certain way, this is the outcome you get. And for some of them, it'll be just a matter of taste. Or some examples, it might be like, hey, look at these swearing jokes. They've created this awesome way of being like that. And this other group has created this other awesome. Cool, we've got two awesome ways of being. And then other things, it might become very clear that way is pretty bad. Like if you have a whole community of people that care for one another, perhaps they'll find that that group goes a lot better than the group where everyone's selfish. And by having the different groups, like showing what the groups are succeeding or achieving, maybe even having, well, in the vision, there was like metrics. People had apps where they'd track stuff. Actually, apps didn't exist at the time. But yeah, there was some kind of supercomputer that was tracking when people wanted to share things. And so, yeah, being able to see that way of being has that result, that way of being has that result. So then people were able to choose more of the things that helped. So yeah, I definitely want people to take from this vision to just be as awesome as they can, as they want, and that as the world evolves to be more and more awesome, of all of our collective awesomes, we'll just keep evolving more awesomeness. That was what was in the vision. Like when I first had it, like I said, I was really lonely, and so I wanted to be loved, and I did lots of brain programs around being invited to lots of parties, and I partied like wild. And yeah, I'd go to parties and I'd be like, who wants to get hypnotized and have a vision for changing the world? So I was like doing positive things in the parties. But then I also would go out to bars and clubs and be sober and trying to be like, hey, look, you can get drunk just on the power of your mind. And everyone would come up and be like, man, what have you been drinking? And I was like, yeah, it's just positivity. And I like to think I was a positive influence on some people, but I also imagine a lot of them were drunk and didn't even remember. So yeah, I did a bunch of brain programs that were helpful for me at the time, but that I now have more mature ones. And yeah, I hope that everybody uses this for all the things you want. If you want to have great relationships, if you want to have great passion, if you want to have great parties, like do whatever you want. I hope we're also like thinking, if I could do anything, what would I want? What would be this is a good question I ask myself often. What would be the world I would create if I was making the brain programs that everyone would copy? What would be the most beautiful world? And that kind of helps me be creative of like, what kind of person do I want to be? And we'll all come up with different answers to that question. But I have a feeling that a lot of the awesomeness that we imagine would overlap a lot. That was my little baby. I think he's excited about an enlightened world. Yeah. And you were talking about what is good. It's different to every person. There are things that people can want that harm them, like physical harm or harm to their health or harm psychologically. So I guess I hope that people try to listen to different perspectives or read timeless philosophy and see what they can learn about values in life, to not just save themselves from things that could be harmful, but also to save time. If you spend too much time cultivating something and you realize, oh, actually it's not fulfilling at all, like it might not have hurt anyone, but you wasted a huge opportunity of other cool stuff you could do. So yeah, as Fence said, is how does this relate to Buddhism? In Buddhism, they don't just talk enlightenment. I guess part of enlightenment is right living and right speech, truthfulness, goodness. And by having good ethics, then all the other good stuff falls into place. So yeah, I guess I would encourage that. There are people who look at traditional ethics and they just scoff at it because they disagree with a few of the things. That's fine. I hope we just don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Like, learn the wisdom from wherever you can. And if there's some part you disagree with, don't just dismiss it. Like, look at it, think about it. Yeah. All right. That's my response to what you had to say, Creek. Does anyone else have a question or a comment?
Yeah, but it's not really related. I sent you. And I also saw that you wanted to talk to me about something.
Let's do that after. Let's try and keep the theme what we're doing right now. I think that will make more sense to everybody.
Okay.
Do you want to grab a seat?
In this case, no, I don't have anything.
Okay.
No, I'm fine here. Thank you.
Cool. Does anybody have either a response? Actually, Shreximus, you said you can't imagine having an experience like that. I would like to respond to that. As I described it, I was hoping that we would all be imagining it. So I hope that as you imagined it, some part of you had that experience. Would that be fair to say? Or maybe he's away from his VR right now. But yeah. What did you say?
I think they did not understand what you said.
Shreximus, are you with us? Okay. So, I guess my hope was, as I was describing this story, that each one of us would imagine that impact on ourselves. And not just for this story, but whenever you meet someone that acts in an inspiring way, I hope you can imagine yourself thinking or feeling like that. Not that you have to just copy this person that you think's great, but I think some part of you should copy it. So then you have more choices, more options of like, hey, wow, I could act like that, or my old brain program. Or if you're reading some philosophy and it talks about having love and kindness for all beings. If you read something like that, I hope rather than being like, well, that's really epic, I hope you'd be like, oh, that's more than I could imagine right now. I'm going to try to imagine it. And it might take a minute to be able to actually imagine it. But it's worth it. So whenever you hear like really helpful ideas or you see people acting in a way that seems wonderful, I really encourage you to try to internalize it. Imagine yourself being that way. So does anyone else have any other thoughts or questions? So I'd like to open it up in your imagination or your thoughts about yourself. How would you make the world or it doesn't have to be the world. How would you make your friends? Maybe the kids at school, maybe the people at work. Like, what would be your awesome life? I just want us all to take a moment to imagine it. Think about the way people treat each other and what you'd like it to be like, or the kinds of things that you'd want happening in your community. And whatever ideas you just had, I hope you make those activities happen with your community, or that you treat people in the way that you just thought of, or you live in the way that you thought would be good. VR DeadSec, did you raise your hand?
No, I guess like it's just my controller is getting up.
Okay. Okay, so I think I want to just have a couple of wrap-up statements, then we'll finish with a meditation and finishing dedication. Oh, Shreximus, you're back.
Oh, was I gone?
Oh,
I might have.
I asked you a question before. Maybe you missed it.
Oh, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. I might have kind of been deep into the meditating along with you.
Oh, wonderful. I was responding to what you said about how you couldn't imagine having that experience. And I asked, did some part of you imagine having that experience?
I mean, I've just never had anything even close to that. Really, it's funny because as you were talking about it, I was like, wow, that's incredible. But at the same time, I was like, that also seems so terrifying to have something so out of the ordinary and vivid, but also able to be okay with that kind of loss of control. It just seems, I don't know, really, really interesting and cool, and like, there's lots that I'm not familiar with yet.
So it wasn't terrifying at all. It was just wonderful and exciting. So I wasn't at all thinking about loss of control. It was only, I don't know if this vision lasted for a minute or half an hour. I don't know. But in terms of like the experience of it, imagine if you were having a really amazing dream. I don't know if you remember your dreams, but you're just there, and then, whoa, all this stuff's happening. That was what it was like. Just the stuff that was happening was epically wow.
And it was caused through like a very deep meditation, like a jhana, or
I hadn't learned to meditate yet. My theory is that in that heartfelt moment where I had said to my subconscious, hey, show me how I'm meant to be and I'll be it, or show me how the world's meant to be and I'll make it happen, that either that was a prayer that was answered and I don't know why it happened at that moment a week later, or it was my subconscious. I asked something wild, my subconscious thought about it, and boom, the answer happened to be really epic. And to put that into real terms, I don't know if you've ever been working on a puzzle or something, you're like, I don't know the answer. And you think about it for a while, and then maybe like the next day or that night or something, you're like, oh, that's the answer. Like your subconscious just presents it to you. So that could be an explanation. It was just an epic answer that, boom, there it is. Yeah. These are just two of the visions. I had a bunch of other stuff that happened soon after that were a little more spiritual, and one or two of them were terrifying. But these days I try to be as like not spiritual as possible. And I don't really have great explanations for those other experiences, so I don't really share them much. Amaza, you had something you wanted to say?
Earthquake. Yeah, I think there's an earthquake. I think it stopped already.
Right here, right now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I just felt an earthquake.
Alright, so the religious people watching the live stream are probably saying that was God saying I should not deny him. But I'm just going to say it was a coincidence.
Are you in the West?
California.
California?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Massachusetts here. We get nothing.
No, I'm pretty sure that was just an earthquake. I'm gonna go check on the baby.
The baby's fine.
Are you guys
It was
in
not a big
northern
one.
or
Very good idea.
Southern? Because I have some people there.
We're San Francisco,
Northern or southern?
but I didn't feel it, so it was really mild.
But it wasn't that bad. It wasn't a huge one. I just wanna be close to the baby. I think it's probably more that. It's probably more for me than anything else.
Yeah.
All right. Bye guys. Get inspired.
Thanks, baby. So yeah, in regards to the experience, I actually propose to people that I hope they also make that dedication to the universe or to the infinite, that they'll devote themselves to goodness. And I think your subconscious or the infinite will give you a lot of inspiring, awesome thoughts or ideas or visions if you do it. That's more out there than I normally say in this group. I try to keep this super practical, but yeah, that was my experience, and I don't know how to deny it. Hey, Ekis, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh no, I was adjusting my headset. I'm sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we could talk about those other experiences and the other visions I saw that other people had where there was a lot of overlap, and but yeah, let's do that some other time. So in just a moment I'm going to start our closing meditation. Is there any last thoughts or questions? Morgan? It's great to have you back, by the way.
Thank you.
Alright, well, if there's no final questions or thoughts, we're going to do a quick meditation. Yes, Creek.
Okay, so I think I'm understanding what I'm misunderstanding a little bit, which is really cool. So, I think I'm coming from a perspective that experience is entirely defined by the self. However, I think what a lot of your vision is contingent on is the power and usefulness that is like culture / environment and how it informs our experience. I wonder if that's more liberating or less liberating than my interpretation of how we define experience. I'm gonna think about it. I think I understand what I misunderstand.
So one thing I want to say is that the insight that how you experience something is based on your experience, that's great. But it's only one perspective. You could also step outside of yourself and look at a community and be like, wow, the activities they do, that's real. You can have a bunch of people sitting around in bliss, imagining the infinite light of goodness, and if they don't farm any food, they starve and die. So stepping out of perspective and just looking at the reality is good too. And maybe overanalyzing the philosophy of stuff might just block that it's actually important for people to be healthy and live a practical life that is good. So the lens of our perception is shaped by ourselves and we can change our perception, great. Push that to the limit. But please don't let that be the only lens by which you look at things.
Awesome, man. Sick. I'm super excited to like dive more into that.
Great. All right. So for the closing meditation, I am thinking of doing something along the lines of internalizing the best of what you just heard, and maybe thinking of things that you would like to practice for yourself. But is there any themes that you would like to request, or any emotions or feelings you'd like me to emphasize in the meditation? Yes, Creek.
I would say maybe emphasizing the maybe power and inspiration that you felt after your first vision.
Wonderful. All right, I will do that. So, let's dive in, and I just want to mix it up a little bit. You know, meditation often is calm and somber, but I want everyone just to have a little shake. Just shake your hands around, have a stretch, and try and move your shoulders and your back more than you normally would. I want you to not just stretch, but energize your body. Get the blood pumping, more oxygen to your brain, more endorphins and positive feelings. Wiggle your fingers and toes, maybe laugh a little bit at it. Stretch right up and imagine your ideals and pure goodness. And then close the eyes and bring your hands down into your lap. And take a slow, deep breath. So I want you to imagine what you're going to take away from today. My hope is that you're empowered. You feel great to practice happiness, to imagine being good at all the things that you do, so you get more skillful. To imagine kindness and warmth that's more beautiful than you ever knew. And for you to be that person for the people around you. I hope you can also apply this new enlightenment to the thoughts around the practice. If there's any part of you that thinks it's big or challenging, decide instead to think, hey, I'm just using this tool to be happy and wonderful. If there's any part of you that thinks about how much you'll practice or what it will feel like, imagine feeling great. And as you keep watching all the different thoughts and attitudes you have, I hope with every one of the thoughts you have, there's a part of you that asks, is that helpful? And with ease and joy, you keep having the thoughts and the feelings and the attitudes that make life easy and joyful and warm and kind and good. So now imagine if you lived on a planet where everyone was unified, everyone was blissful, the culture was just joy and celebration and happiness every day. people really helped each other's dreams come true. If someone had an idea, the people with the skills and resources helped them make it happen. A planet where it's just wonderful for everybody. And then imagine if you were sent from that planet here. And I invite you to look at how you then think about this world. You could look at it with sadness. What does that feel like? To me, that's completely unempowering. You could look at it with hope and care. Or you could even look at it with wild excitement. The possibilities to bring so much more love and joy and ease to so many beings. And that reflection that I just said, I actually want you to notice when I said sadness, how it felt. Like going there is really not helpful. And so when we approach any of our thoughts, let's try to make our mind on the things that are wonderful. How do you make each topic be as uplifting and as inspiring and as awesome as you can? How do you make it so that when you think about yourself, it's exciting and joyful what you get to practice each day? Imagine living each day in a way that brings smiles and joy and vibrancy to those around you. That you do things that make you smile. You create things that help others. Take some deep breaths and just energize the happiness and positivity in yourself. Now, this vision that I had of the super bubble transforming every single aspect of myself and every single being, all of culture. I hope this vision becomes more vivid and more felt and more inspiring for you every day. Perhaps it's something that you could remember that will keep inspiring you until you're enlightened. Perhaps it's something to discuss, to make stronger in your mind. Perhaps it's something that we could animate in virtual reality or turn into films or cartoons. And not just my vision. There are amazing visions throughout the world. Gandhi wrote encyclopedias of how an ideal society could be. But I don't know many people who've read them. So just allowing ourselves to be really excited about all of the wonderful things that the world has, all the beautiful culture that's been created, and may we share it more vibrantly, more awesomely. May you fill your own mind with awesomeness. So I just invite everyone to take 10 deep breaths, and each breath you take, imagine feeling as great as you can. Bring your focus into happiness, confidence, positivity. Perhaps you could imagine every day giving yourself more of that positivity. Each thing you do, imagining being awesome and vibrant, just infusing your whole self with all the goodness you can imagine, even bigger than what you can imagine, all the goodness you can find. And then I invite everybody to start to stretch again, to move. You might want to stand up, you might want to just stretch, wiggle your fingers and toes. Just feel it in your body. to be inspired, to be positive, to feel enlightened, to know that you're creating yourself to be more enlightened every day. Maybe you start to move a little faster and feel that enthusiasm in yourself. Feel that creativity, that potential, the excitement to explore. How amazing could we be in this way or that way? What would I choose to value? What would I choose to make good if I can just explore and transform quickly and wonderfully? How much love could I share? How much happiness and kindness could I create? And we're going to finish with our dedication. It's a little practice that Zenki, the founder of this community, created. So let's just dedicate the time that you just took. Cherish it, nurture it. Whatever goodness was sown in seeds in the garden of yourself, let them grow and blossom. Let's dedicate this session to the world becoming that enlightened world. There's awesomeness within you. And it deserves to have the attention and the love and the focus every day. So, as we walk out, I invite everybody to bow to the enlightened being, to find that enlightened being within yourself. And then, when we come outside, we're going to bow to everybody and then just begin the social part of this evening. We just bow to everybody. Join us. And how about we all go and bow to the camera together? Thank you for joining us, everybody.